Well, welcome to the inaugural video of the channel, which I have recently started to put back together. Never really was much of a channel anyway, but this first video isn't really the first video, but it's the first one I'm posting. It's on trapping tips and hints. Excuse me, I'm drinking my chaga. I got a video on that as well. And just some hints and tips that I use to make my trapping a little easier and more efficient. I hope you enjoy it. So just sit back, relax for all 15 minutes. You might want to pop a very small bowl of popcorn, but enjoy it and take care. Okay, here's that first hint and tip or two that I was just mentioning. And to recap, I don't have as much grip strength in my hands as I used to have. So setting these traps out in the sticks can be a little arduous, you know. So what I did is I came up with a way to preset the traps, or at least partially preset the traps. And I do that by simply partially opening my jaws and then wiring them together with the piece of wire in about four twists. Holds it pretty good. This way, even if the safeties come off, and they will, they always do. I've tested these. I've thrown these around, thrown up in the air, and let them fall on the ground, and they've never become dislodged if you're careful, and always do at least four twists. Another thing I did is you can notice that there's electrical tape, which limits the movement of the triggers themselves. And the reason I do that is because I'd get up on the tree, you know, put it in the mount, and I'd have one trigger was way over here and the other one was way over there, you know, or way over here, and I'm, you know, losing grip strength, and I'm probably up on a ladder, and it was just kind of a pain in the butt. So I decided to just take this whole option of sliding away or being in the wrong spot when I need it to be in the right spot away, because if anybody can be clumsy enough to not to do something properly, it's me. So I limit the travel to about 3/8 of an inch or so, you know, plus or minus. I don't get real technical with it, and they're always lined up, and they're always right where they're supposed to be. I'll get the trap set on the tree, and then I just clip the wire, and it's good to go. Another thing I do is to make the running of the trap lane a lot faster is I carry a couple traps that are set up like this for me, so that when I get an animal in a trap, I don't have to take the animal out of the trap, because a fair amount of times you can't, just because of the way the animal freezes. Even if you open the jaws, you just can't get the animal out of there. It's got to thaw out and stuff like that. So I came up with this method because I can just unwire the old trap, stick the animal in my backpack, and throw this one on, and it takes just a few minutes. I don't usually have to do anything else. I don't have to mess with the cubby or anything. So doing these few things has really sped things up for me and made it a lot more convenient. I'm not out there trying to muscle these traps around. Like I said, I'm getting older, and I just can't force these springs together like I used to. You know, it's the same as if you're practicing with your bow before deer season. You know, you're out there in the yard, and you can draw that bow back just fine when you're on the ground in jeans and a t-shirt, but put yourself 20 feet up in a tree and you got all your winter clothing on and stuff like that, it's significantly more difficult. So this is my way of cheating that just makes it a lot faster and a lot more convenient. Everything's preset, ready to go. Anyway, I hope that will help you out and maybe give you some ideas and speed things up for you. There's a few more tips. I'm going to actually set a trap up in a tree just to show you how it all comes together for me. This little creature here is the mounting bracket for the conibear traps. You don't need these technically. You can use nails and stuff like this, but these are just so dang convenient and easy to use. I prefer them. Now, you can nail these to a tree. There's plenty of holes for them, but what I found is that unless you're using really short nails, you're going to have trouble pulling the nails out of the tree, and even if the nails do come out, you're going to mangle this bracket. And why leave a nail in a tree and or mangle a bracket that you're just going to have to either try to pound all of the kinks and damage out of it, or buy new ones. So what I do is I use, oops, I better go this way. I use just a drywall screw or a deck screw or whatever I've got on. They don't have to be quite this long. This is just the first one I grabbed. And yes, I do keep a cordless drill with me. Like I said, I like it easy. So we just screw the mount into the tree until it's good and secure. And I will go get some simulated bait and we'll continue on. Okay, I found some really great bait. Here's a little piece of tree moss, and this is just going to simulate a chunk of meat. Now, I do usually hold the meat to the tree with a nail, because you don't have to drive it in very far. It's just got to go in just enough to hold the bait up there. And you don't have to use a nail this long either. It's just what I had handy. So you put your bait up, and then what I do, the guy that taught me how to do this initially was actually off of a DVD. No one's actually gone out and shown me how to start trapping. I learned everything by reading and watching videos and stuff. And he was trapping down in the lower 48, so he would cross two nails and stick his pine boughs up in there to form the cubby. But up here in Alaska, we have primarily spruce trees, and their needle structure is pretty sparse. And what I found is if I just did the nail thing, it takes so many more pine boughs to get an effective cubby up here, rather than, you know, 2 or 3 like he was using in the videos and stuff. I was using like 7 or 8. Otherwise, you could see right through the cubby and see that there was meat there, and an animal would circumvent it. So what I started doing is I started using fencing staples instead, thusly. Sometimes I use 2, and sometimes I use 3, and I just tap them in like this. And since these are smaller, it keeps hold of my pine boughs a lot better, and gives me time to actually jam more up in there. Because sometimes I'll have to, you know, grab 7 or 8 of them before you get an effective cubby up here. And sometimes I do use 3, but 2 will generally do enough. And that's the way I generally set up my cubby. Of course, the cubby actually goes on last. And the third and final part of this is setting the trap into the brackets. You notice how I wired those together so that it's almost all the way closed. And this chain here, what you want to try to do is find a branch to wire this out away from the tree, just with a little piece of wire or something, so that way when the trap is sprung, it swings away from the tree, and then animals that climb the tree won't be as likely to get into your trap. So you want to wire this up away from the tree if you can. Okay, the last step of actually setting the trap is to apply your trap setting tool. This is not it. I couldn't find the actual one I use. And there are 3 notches in this trigger, and I usually end up using the center one. It's just the easiest one to use. You can close it tighter, but it'll set on the middle one easier, or easiest, I should say. Then your last step is to remove your trap safety mechanism. You could just slide it over to the side, and the trap would probably spring just fine. But and then just very easily take your trap setter off, and you're basically done. All you have to really do is go out and find your pine boughs and create your cubby. You want it totally covered so that basically the animal has to go up through the trap and trip the trigger. Another thing I do, which I don't have to show you, is I carry a short section of ladder from one of my ladder stands from my old deer hunting days back when I was down in the lower 48, and I set my traps up. I go up 1 or 2 steps and I set my traps up a little higher, just so that my dogs can't possibly get their nose up in there and crush their face and hurt themselves, or even anyone else's dog. There aren't any other dogs really up here. There aren't any other people up here for the most part, but just in case, I don't want to hurt a dog or anything, so that would break my heart. So I just try to be a little bit more careful, and this is actually, it works out so good for me. It's like no fuss, no muss. Just go through and follow the steps I've given you, and for me it works out really well. Even though they are wired, and I've never had a wire fail, I still don't stick my hands in the traps. Of course, you have these chains. What I do is I take a small carabiner, I chain all the traps together, put them in my pack, and then I leave the carabiner attached to something outside of the pack. So I just pull them out one at a time. I don't jam my hand down in my pack full of traps and forget that I screwed up one day. So you still have to exercise caution, but this works out like just 1, 2, 3, you're done. And then you can spend more time running your trap line and skinning animals and boarding them up, as opposed to fighting with traps, because I don't like fighting with stuff. I like my stuff easy.